The mahogany doors of the Albany County Courthouse swung shut behind Anna Collins with a decisive thud that echoed through the marble hallway. She stood motionless on the worn stone steps, her leather briefcase growing slick under her tight grip as the crisp October wind whipped around her. A yellow maple leaf spiraled down, landing at her feet, a small reminder that the world kept turning, even when your own had stopped making sense. After 18 months of legal battles, the summerhouse was finally hers, a property she hadn't known existed until her husband Jack's sudden death. The sound of quick footsteps behind her broke through her daze. "Mrs. Collins," her attorney Sarah Martinez called out, her heels clicking against the stone. "The weather's turning. Would you like me to have those documents sent to your office?" Sarah's dark eyes held the same mixture of professional distance and personal concern that had characterized their entire 18-month journey through probate court. Anna turned, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face as the wind picked up. Her throat felt tight, making it difficult to speak. The taste of approaching rain hung in the air, matching her mood. "No," she managed, forcing herself to meet Sarah's concerned gaze. "I'll take them with me. I need to start processing all of this." The words felt inadequate, barely scratching the surface of the emotional turbulence churning inside her. The manila envelope Sarah handed over felt heavier than its contents warranted, as if weighted down by unanswered questions. Inside were the deed to a summer house in the Adirondacks, property tax records, and bank statements, all evidence of a life Jack had kept hidden from her during their 15 years of marriage. Their marriage that she'd always believed was built on trust and transparency, on Sunday morning coffee rituals, and shared dreams of the future. Back in her car, Anna sat with her hands gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. Her wedding ring caught the afternoon light, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the dashboard, a beautiful display that now felt like a mockery. The court proceedings had revealed that Jack had purchased the property 3 years before his death, paying in cash from an account she'd never known about. The question that had haunted her throughout the legal battle still churned in her mind. Why? The first drops of rain began to fall as she finally started the engine. The familiar drive to her downtown apartment felt foreign somehow, as if she were navigating through someone else's life. Traffic lights blurred through her windshield, and the rhythmic swish of wipers marked time as her mind raced through 15 years of memories, searching for signs she might have missed. She remembered the way Jack would sometimes disappear for a day or two, claiming work emergencies at his environmental law firm. How he'd return looking both exhausted and somehow lighter, as if he'd shed a burden she hadn't known he was carrying. Had those been his trips to the summer house? How many other secrets had he kept beneath his warm smile and gentle demeanor? That evening, in her modern downtown apartment with its floor-to-ceiling windows and chrome fixtures, all chosen together with Jack, Anna spread the documents across her glass dining room table. Thunder rolled in the distance as she sorted through the papers, each one revealing another layer of deception. The stark contrast between her contemporary surroundings and the rustic property in the photos created an odd dissonance that made her head spin. The listing showed a charming 2-story house with weathered blue shutters and a wraparound porch, its wooden siding aged to a soft gray that seemed to emerge organically from the surrounding wilderness. Tall pines crowded close to the structure, their branches reaching toward windows that reflected the surrounding forest. A pristine lake stretched out behind the house, its surface like polished glass in the real estate photos. It looked like something out of a storybook, exactly the kind of place Jack knew she'd always dreamed of owning. Her hands trembled as she sorted through the paperwork. Bank statements revealed regular withdrawals, carefully timed and calculated to avoid detection. Property maintenance bills showed consistent upkeep, roof repairs, plumbing updates, routine landscaping. Everything pointed to methodical planning, to deliberate secrecy. Jack, who had always been so meticulous in his legal work, had applied that same precision to maintaining his double life. "What were you thinking, Jack?" she whispered, tracing the outline of the house in the photo. The paper grew damp under her finger, and she realized she was crying. "Why keep this from me?" The question echoed in the empty apartment, bouncing off modern surfaces that suddenly felt cold and impersonal. The sound of rain against the windows grew stronger, and thunder rolled in the distance. Anna moved to the living room, curling up in the leather armchair where Jack used to sit during their Sunday morning coffee ritual. The familiar scent of leather and the lingering trace of his cologne brought fresh tears to her eyes. She pulled his old throw blanket around her shoulders, remembering how he used to wrap it around them both on stormy nights like this one. Lightning illuminated the city skyline, casting harsh shadows across the room. In that brief flash of brightness, Anna caught sight of their wedding photo on the mantel. They looked so young, so full of hope and trust in each other. How had they gone from that moment to this one, where she sat alone discovering that the man she'd loved had lived a life parallel to their shared one? After a sleepless night of contemplation, watching the city lights flicker through the rain, Anna made her decision. She needed to see the house for herself. No more hiding behind legal papers and speculation. It was time to face whatever truth awaited her in the Adirondacks. The drive north felt like entering another world. As Anna's car climbed higher into the mountains, the urban landscape of steel and glass gave way to vast stretches of wilderness. The GPS signal flickered intermittently, making her grip the steering wheel tighter with each signal lost notification. The winding roads hugged the mountainsides, each turn revealing more breathtaking views of the autumn landscape. Sugar maples blazed orange and red against the dark green of pine forests, their colors intensified by the previous night's rain. She stopped at a small general store in a town whose name she'd already forgotten, buying coffee that tasted nothing like her usual artisanal blend. The elderly cashier had given her a knowing look when she mentioned Pine Lake Road. "Jack Collins' place?" the woman had asked, but Anna couldn't bring herself to respond, hurrying back to her car instead. The air grew noticeably crisper as she gained elevation, and the traffic thinned until she was often the only car on the road. Her cell phone signal disappeared entirely, leaving her feeling oddly untethered from her normal life. After 3 hours of driving, she turned onto a narrow gravel path marked by a weathered wooden sign, Pine Lake Road. The crunch of gravel under her tires seemed unnaturally loud in the mountain silence. Her heart began to race as the summer house emerged from behind a cluster of towering pines. The photos hadn't done it justice. The afternoon sun broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the wraparound porch, where a pair of Adirondack chairs faced the serene lake beyond. The blue shutters she'd seen in the photographs were actually a deeper shade of navy. An intricate gingerbread trim adorned the eaves, details that hadn't been visible in the real estate pictures. A stone chimney rose from the center of the roof, its rough surface dotted with patches of moss. Anna's footsteps crunched on the gravel as she approached the front door, each step feeling heavier than the last. The key trembled in her hand as she inserted it into the lock. It turned with surprising ease, as if the house had been waiting for her arrival. The door swung open with a soft creak, releasing the scent of pine, old wood, and something else. A familiar smell that made her heart clench. Jack's aftershave. The interior was a time capsule of rustic charm that took her breath away. Honey-colored hardwood floors stretched throughout the open-plan first floor, their surface worn smooth by years of use. Exposed wooden beams crossed the ceiling, each one bearing the marks of hand-hewn craftsmanship. A massive stone fireplace dominated the living room, its hearth black with the remnants of fires long extinguished. Built-in bookshelves flanked the fireplace, their shelves lined with a curious mix of environmental law texts and classic literature. But it was the details that stopped her in her tracks. 2 coffee cups in the kitchen cabinet, one with a chip in the rim, just like Jack preferred. A well-worn paperback of The Old Man and the Sea, his favorite, on the side table. A ticket stub from their first date still used as a bookmark. A waxed canvas jacket hanging by the door that she recognized from their early dating years, now bearing the patina of mountain weather. These weren't just signs of occupation. They were pieces of Jack's life, carefully curated in this secret space. Each item seemed to mock her with its familiarity, representing a version of her husband that had existed just beyond her reach. "Oh my God," she breathed, running her fingers along a familiar-looking quilt draped over the back of a leather armchair. The pattern of interlocking squares and shades of blue and green was identical to one Jack's grandmother had made. Or perhaps this was another of his secrets, another piece of their shared history that wasn't what she'd believed it to be. Through the windows, she could see the lake stretching out behind the house, its surface rippling with the afternoon breeze. A wooden dock extended into the water, its boards silvered with age. A small rowboat was tied to the dock, gently bobbing with the waves. Had Jack spent time out there, floating on the water, carrying the weight of whatever secrets had driven him to create this hidden life? The discovery of the hidden room happened by accident. As the afternoon light began to fade, Anna was examining a floor-to-ceiling bookshelf in the study, noting how the titles aligned with Jack's interests: environmental law, local history, nature guides. Her hand brushed against a copy of Walden, and something about the spacing of the wall caught her attention. The section seemed slightly off-center compared to the rest of the room's precise architecture. Heart pounding, she ran her fingers along the edge of the bookcase, feeling for any irregularity. There, a slight gap, barely visible unless you were looking for it. A gentle push revealed a concealed door, and the sound of hidden hinges creaking open seemed to echo through the house like a confession. The hidden space was small, but meticulously organized, illuminated by the last rays of sunlight filtering through a narrow window she hadn't noticed from outside. Filing cabinets lined one wall, their metal surfaces reflecting the dying light. The opposite wall held a corkboard covered in photographs and notes, connected by red string in an intricate web of relationships that reminded her of crime scene investigations she'd seen in movies. In the center stood a solid oak desk, its surface marked with years of use. Coffee ring stains marked the wood, overlapping in places like the rings of a tree, each one representing a night Jack had spent here, working on whatever had consumed him. Placed precisely in the middle was a leather-bound journal, its pages slightly warped from humidity. The air felt different here, heavy with secrets and stale from disuse. Dust motes danced in the shaft of sunlight from the hidden window, and Anna could smell old paper and leather, mixed with a faint trace of Jack's preferred bourbon. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the journal, the leather warm and supple under her touch. "What is all this?" she murmured, sinking into the desk chair that still held the impression of Jack's form. The first entry was dated 3 years ago, written in Jack's familiar, precise handwriting. "I never meant for it to go this far. The truth about Dad's death changes everything. Anna can't know, not yet. It would destroy her faith in everything we've built. I have to protect her, even if it means keeping this secret. The evidence Maxwell left behind. It's worse than I imagined. How do you tell someone that everything they believed about their family was built on lies?" Anna's breath caught in her throat. Jack's father's death had been ruled a hunting accident 15 years ago, before she'd even met Jack. She remembered how Jack would grow quiet whenever his father was mentioned, how he'd change the subject when family history came up. What truth could have driven him to such secrecy? What could have been so terrible that he felt he needed to protect her from it? As she explored the room, each discovery raised more questions than answers. Photographs she'd never seen before showed Jack with an elderly man she didn't recognize, standing in front of this very house. Their body language suggested familiarity, even friendship. But Jack's expression in the photos was tense, guarded. Letters written in spidery handwriting filled a folder labeled Maxwell Grant Correspondence. Documents bearing official government seals were marked with dates going back decades. The sound of tires on gravel outside made her freeze. Through the narrow window, she could see a vehicle pulling up to the house, an old pickup truck she didn't recognize. Anna's heart began to race. She wasn't expecting anyone, and as far as she knew, no one in the area even knew she was here. A car door slammed, followed by footsteps on the gravel drive. Then came a knock at the front door, firm and confident, as if the visitor knew exactly why they were there. The knocking persisted, echoing through the house like a heartbeat. Anna quickly closed the hidden room, her hands shaking as she realigned the bookcase. She took a deep breath, trying to compose herself, as a friendly voice called out from the porch. "Hello? I saw the car in the driveway. I'm Ben Harrison from next door." She hesitated, her mind racing. The property documents hadn't mentioned any neighbors. Through the study window, she could see the pickup truck more clearly now. A well-maintained Ford F-150 with local plates and a Pine Lake Conservation Society sticker on the bumper. The sight of it stirred a memory of Jack mentioning a local environmental group, but the details escaped her. Taking another deep breath, Anna made her way downstairs. The floorboards creaked beneath her feet, each sound amplified by her heightened awareness. She paused at the bottom of the stairs, her hand on the banister, gathering courage before approaching the door. Opening it revealed a man in his early 50s, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes creased by sun exposure. He wore worn jeans and a flannel shirt, and carried a wooden basket filled with fresh vegetables. The scent of earth and green things wafted in, a stark contrast to the musty air of the hidden room. "Welcome to Pine Lake," he said, offering a warm smile that didn't quite mask his careful assessment of her. "I was Jack's neighbor for the past few years. When I saw the car, I thought—" He paused, shifting the basket. "Well, I hoped it might be you." Anna's breath caught in her throat. "You knew Jack." The words came out barely above a whisper, laden with the weight of all she didn't know. "Please," she added, stepping aside. "Come in." The mention of her husband's name from a stranger's lips made her realize just how little she knew about this part of Jack's life. Each new revelation felt like another crack in the foundation of their marriage. The kitchen seemed to come alive as Ben moved through it with familiar ease, setting the basket on the counter and helping himself to the coffee maker, clearly knowing where everything was kept. "Fresh vegetables from my greenhouse," he explained, unpacking tomatoes, cucumbers, and herbs that filled the kitchen with an earthy aroma. "Jack always said you were an excellent cook. He'd stop by sometimes, sharing whatever you'd made for dinner the night before." Anna's hands trembled as she reached for coffee mugs, the same ones she'd noticed earlier. The chip in one rim felt sharp under her fingertip, a physical reminder of the life Jack had led here. "That's the thing," she said, setting them down harder than intended. "I had no idea this place existed until after he died. Did he ever mention why he kept it a secret?" Ben's expression turned thoughtful as he measured coffee grounds. The rich scent of brewing coffee began to fill the kitchen, mingling with the vegetable aromas and the lingering traces of Jack's presence. "I'm a local historian, Mrs. Collins. Been studying Pine Lake and its families for 30 years now." He paused, watching the coffee begin to drip. "Sometimes the past has a way of demanding attention, whether we want it to or not." Jack understood that better than most. Through the window, Anna could see the lake's surface rippling in the late afternoon breeze, sunlight dancing across the water. The scene was peaceful, but she could feel tension building beneath the surface of their conversation. "What exactly do you mean by that?" she asked, studying Ben's face for any sign of deception. After the past 18 months of legal battles and discoveries, she'd learned to be wary of convenient coincidences. Ben took a thoughtful sip of his coffee before responding. "This house," he began, gesturing around them. "It's more than just property. It's part of a story that goes back generations. A story Jack was trying to understand and maybe set right." Ben reached for his truck keys. "I have something you need to see. Would you mind if I brought in some materials from my archives?" Anna nodded, curiosity overriding her caution. As Ben disappeared briefly, she found herself staring at the empty chair across from her, Jack's chair. How many conversations had he had in this very spot, piecing together whatever mystery had consumed him? Ben returned with a weathered leather briefcase, its brass fixtures dulled with age. Over the next few hours, he spread decades of history across the kitchen table. Yellowed photographs, property deeds, newspaper clippings, and handwritten letters that told a story she never could have imagined. The summerhouse was built in 1932 by Jack's grandfather, Thomas Collins, Ben explained, pointing to an old photograph of a proud-looking man standing in front of a newly constructed home. The man's stance and the set of his jaw reminded Anna eerily of Jack. He was one of Pine Lake's founding families, but a dispute with his brother led to its sale in 1945. The property changed hands several times after that. Anna leaned forward, studying a photograph dated 1985. Two young men stood arm in arm in front of the house, their faces bright with friendship and possibility. One was clearly Jack's father, Robert Collins, but the other man looked strikingly similar to the elderly figure from the photos in the hidden room. Their easy camaraderie was a stark contrast to the tense expressions in the later photos she'd found. "That's Maxwell Grant," Ben confirmed, noting her recognition. "He owned this house before Jack bought it. The official records show he died in a hunting accident with Robert Collins 15 years ago." Anna's coffee cup clattered against its saucer, coffee sloshing over the rim. The date aligned perfectly with the hunting accident that had claimed Jack's father, an event that had always been a dark cloud in their relationship. "The same accident that killed Jack's father?" "Exactly," Ben nodded gravely. "But those of us who've lived here long enough know there was more to it." Both men were experienced hunters who knew these woods like the backs of their hands. The circumstances were unusual. As Ben continued to lay out documents, a complex web of relationships and events began to emerge. The Collins and Grant families had been intertwined for generations, their histories marked by friendship, betrayal, and secrets that seemed to echo through the years. Maxwell and Robert were more than just neighbors, Ben explained, showing her old business documents. The letterhead bore both their names, along with a logo featuring a pine tree. They built the Pine Lake Lumber Company together in the early 80s. It was successful, very successful, until things started going wrong. Anna's mind raced to connect the pieces. The environmental violations Jack mentioned in his journal, was that part of it? Ben's expression darkened. You found the journal then. I wondered if you would... He pulled out a stack of newspaper clippings from the late 1980s, headlines screaming about illegal logging practices and environmental devastation. The articles detailed protests, legal battles, and accusations of corruption. Maxwell discovered that Robert had been cutting corners, logging in protected areas, falsifying environmental impact reports. It nearly destroyed their friendship. Anna's gaze drifted to the window, where the pristine forest surrounded the lake. It was hard to imagine the scars of illegal logging hidden beneath the lush canopy. But why would Robert do that? From everything Jack told me, his father was passionate about conservation. Ben sighed, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and understanding. People are complicated, Mrs. Collins. Sometimes good men make bad choices for what they think are the right reasons. Robert had dreams of expanding the company, of providing jobs for the entire community. But the market was tough, and he started taking risks. As evening approached, shadows lengthened across the kitchen floor. Anna sat with her hands wrapped around a fresh cup of coffee, trying to process everything Ben had shared. The hidden room's contents were beginning to make sense. Jack had been investigating not just his father's death, but a web of decades-old family secrets that threatened to unravel everything he thought he knew about his family's legacy. There's something else you should know, Ben said quietly, reaching into his briefcase one last time. He withdrew a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. The paper crackled slightly as he handled it. Maxwell left this with me, just days before he died. He made me promise to keep it safe until it was needed. Anna's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in the same spidery handwriting she'd seen in the hidden room's documents. To whoever seeks the truth, by the time you read this, I may be gone. Robert Collins was more than my business partner. He was my brother in all but blood. What happened to our company, to our friendship, to this community? It weighs on both our souls. Robert's choices were wrong, but they came from a place of desperate love for his family. When I confronted him with evidence of the violations, he broke down, told me everything. The company was failing long before the illegal logging began. He'd mortgaged everything, including his family's future, trying to keep it afloat. I tried to help him make it right, but some wounds run too deep to heal. The day we went hunting, Robert was a man torn apart by guilt and fear. What happened in those woods was no accident, but it wasn't murder either. It was the culmination of years of pressure, secrets, and impossible choices. To whoever reads this, likely Robert's son, if my guess is right, know that your father was a good man who made terrible mistakes. The truth is both a burden and a gift. Use it wisely. Maxwell Grant. The letter slipped from Anna's fingers, floating to the table like a fallen leaf. Through the kitchen window, she could see the lake turning silver in the gathering dusk. Somewhere in the distance, a loon called out, its mournful cry echoing across the water. Jack found this letter 3 years ago, didn't he? She asked, though she already knew the answer. That's why he bought the house. Why he started investigating. Ben nodded slowly. He came to me first, asking about the accident. The more he dug, the more he discovered. But understanding the truth, and knowing what to do with it, those are two very different things. Anna stood abruptly, needing to move. She walked to the window, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. The lake beyond seemed to hold countless secrets in its depths, just like the house that stood guard over it. She thought of Jack, carrying the weight of this knowledge alone, trying to protect her while grappling with the truth about his father. "Why are you showing me all this now?" she asked, not turning around. Her reflection in the glass looked pale and drawn, a stranger wearing her face. "Because Jack would have wanted you to know," Ben replied simply. He spent 3 years trying to make things right, to honor both his father's memory and Maxwell's truth. But he ran out of time. The sound of another vehicle on the gravel drive drew their attention. Through the gathering darkness, headlights swept across the front of the house. Ben rose from his chair, gathering his documents with careful hands. "That'll be Claire Maxwell," he said quietly. "Maxwell Grant's daughter. She's been waiting to meet you." Anna's heart raced as she watched the car door open. Another piece of the puzzle was about to fall into place, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for what it might reveal. Claire Maxwell emerged from her car like a ghost stepping out of the past. Her silver hair caught the last rays of sunlight, and her bearing carried the same dignified presence Anna had seen in the photographs of her father. She moved with purpose up the gravel path, carrying a worn leather portfolio that looked like it had survived decades of use. Anna's hand trembled as she opened the door. The two women stood face to face, separated by years of secrets and shared loss. "Mrs. Collins," Claire said, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, her green eyes sharp with intelligence and a hint of wariness. "I've been waiting for this moment since Jack first came to see me 3 years ago." The three of them settled in the living room, where Ben lit a fire to ward off the evening chill. The flames cast dancing shadows on the walls, creating an almost conspiratorial atmosphere. Claire opened her portfolio, revealing documents that filled in the final pieces of the puzzle. "The feud between our families went deeper than property disputes," Claire began, her voice steady but tinged with old pain. "My father and Robert Collins were childhood friends who built something remarkable together. But success has a way of changing people, of revealing the cracks in even the strongest foundations." Anna leaned forward, studying financial records that painted a picture of a company's slow descent into corruption. The numbers told a story of mounting debts, increasingly risky investments, and a desperate scramble to keep the business afloat. "According to these letters, your father tried to warn Robert about the illegal practices," she said, her voice quiet with realization. Claire nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Dad discovered that Robert had borrowed money from some dangerous people. The illegal logging was just the tip of the iceberg. There were forged permits, bribes to local officials, environmental reports buried or altered. It was a house of cards waiting to collapse." "But why didn't your father go to the authorities?" Anna asked, struggling to reconcile this image with the man Jack had always described, a pillar of the community, passionate about conservation. "Because of Jack," Claire replied softly, "and because of me. Dad knew that exposing everything would destroy not just Robert, but his entire family. He tried to handle it privately, give Robert a chance to make things right before it was too late." Ben added another log to the fire, the crackling wood punctuating the heavy silence that followed. "They met here, at the summerhouse, on that final day," he said, his voice low. "Maxwell brought evidence of everything, hoping to convince Robert to turn himself in and make amends. Instead," Claire pulled out a sealed envelope that bore Jack's handwriting, dated just weeks before his death. Anna's heart raced as she recognized the stationery, the same kind Jack used for special occasions, birthdays and anniversaries. With trembling fingers, she opened it. "My dearest Anna, if you're reading this, I've failed to finish what I started. The truth about Dad and Maxwell Grant isn't what anyone believed. Dad didn't die in an accident. He took his own life after confessing everything to Maxwell, who suffered a fatal heart attack trying to save him. I learned this 3 years ago, and it changed everything. I've spent these years trying to make amends, secretly funding environmental restoration projects in their names. The house belongs to you now, along with the truth. I know you'll understand what needs to be done. I'm sorry for keeping this from you. I thought I was protecting you, but I realize now that secrets only breed more pain. You deserve to know, to be part of this journey. I hope you can forgive me. All my love, Jack." Tears blurred Anna's vision as she finished reading. The weight of Jack's burden, carried alone for so long, settled on her shoulders. She looked up to see Claire watching her with a mixture of sympathy and understanding. "Jack came to me shortly after he discovered the truth," Claire said softly. "He was devastated, angry, confused. But more than anything, he was determined to make things right, not just for our fathers, but for the entire community that had been affected by their actions. Dawn broke over Pine Lake the next morning, painting the water in shades of pink and gold. Anna stood on the dock, watching a pair of loons glide across the glassy surface. The night had been long, filled with revelations as Claire shared the full scope of Jack's redemption efforts. He had established a foundation in Maxwell Grant's name, channeling funds into restoring the damaged forest areas. Environmental scientists had been hired, indigenous plant species reintroduced, and waterways cleaned. All done anonymously, all part of his attempt to heal wounds that went back generations. "Your husband was an extraordinary man," Claire said, joining Anna on the dock. The early morning mist swirled around their feet, giving the scene an almost otherworldly quality. "He took on my father's mission, but he did it in a way that protected everyone involved. The truth, but also mercy." Anna nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "That sounds like Jack, always trying to find the balance, to do what's right without causing more harm." She paused, watching a fish jump in the distance. "I just wish he had shared this with me. We could have faced it together." Claire placed a gentle hand on Anna's shoulder. "I think he was working up to it. In our last conversation, he talked about telling you everything. He wanted to make sure all the pieces were in place first, that the foundation was stable enough to withstand whatever fallout might come." Back in the house, Ben spread architectural plans across the dining room table. The blueprints, yellowed with age, crinkled slightly as he smoothed them out. "Jack had started these renovations before he died," he explained. "He wanted to transform the house into something more than a reminder of past mistakes." The plans showed thoughtful modifications, a conference center addition designed to blend seamlessly with the original structure, educational spaces, and restoration of the historic elements. Everything pointed to a larger vision, one that Jack had been working toward in secret. "The contractors can begin next month," Ben said, reviewing the timeline. "The conference room will be perfect for environmental education programs, just as Jack planned. We've already had interest from several universities and conservation groups." Anna traced the lines on the blueprints, feeling a new sense of purpose emerging from her grief. The house that had once represented betrayal and secrets was transforming before her eyes into a beacon of hope and redemption. He was trying to heal old wounds and create something positive from all this tragedy. "I want to continue that legacy." Claire nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I think that's what both our fathers would have wanted in the end, to see their mistakes turned into something beautiful and meaningful." As the day progressed, Anna found herself moving through the house with new eyes. Each room held echoes of Jack's presence, but now they felt less like painful reminders and more like guideposts for the future. In the study, she reopened the hidden room, this time seeing it not as a den of secrets, but as a testament to Jack's determination to uncover the truth and make amends. 1 year later, Anna stood on the wraparound porch, watching the first light of dawn illuminate Pine Lake. The house had been transformed, yet its historic charm remained intact. The hidden room's documents had been properly archived, telling the story of two families, a tragic misunderstanding, and one man's quest for redemption. The environmental restoration projects flourished under the guidance of a board that included Claire Maxwell and Ben Harrison. The summerhouse had become a center for healing, both for the land and its people. Environmental scientists worked alongside local community members, and the conference center hosted regular workshops on conservation and reconciliation. Inside, Anna prepared coffee in the kitchen that still held traces of Jack's presence, though now mixed with new memories. Photos lined the walls, Jack with his father in happier times, Maxwell Grant standing proud before the lake, and newer images of restored forests and clear streams. Claire arrived early, as she did most mornings, carrying fresh scones from the local bakery. The scent of cinnamon and coffee filled the air, a comforting ritual that had developed over the past year. "The first workshop participants will be here soon," she said, helping Anna set up. "I think our fathers would be proud of what this place has become." Ben joined them, bringing his usual basket of vegetables from the greenhouse they'd built together. The three of them had formed an unlikely family, bound by shared history and a commitment to healing old wounds. As they worked, Anna found her gaze drawn to the lake outside. The water sparkled in the morning light, a far cry from the polluted state it had been in years ago. Jack's efforts, continued and expanded by their team, had brought new life to the ecosystem. Native fish populations were rebounding, and the once threatened shoreline plants were thriving. "You know," Ben said, following her gaze, "Jack always said that nature has an incredible capacity for healing if we just give it a chance. I think the same is true for people." Anna nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat. "He was right about so many things. I just wish he knew you'd understand," Claire said softly, placing a hand on Anna's arm. "In those last few months, he talked about you constantly, about how your work in child advocacy had inspired him to think bigger, to find ways to help entire communities heal." As the first cars began to arrive, carrying workshop participants from across the country, Anna felt a sense of pride and purpose wash over her. The summer house, once a symbol of secrets and pain, had become a place of learning, growth, and reconciliation. As summer faded into autumn once more, Anna sat in one of the Adirondack chairs on the porch, watching golden leaves dance across the lake's surface. A photo of Jack rested on the small table beside her, his smile seeming warmer and more understanding than ever before. The past year had been a journey of discovery, not just of Jack's secret life, but of her own strength and capacity for forgiveness. She had grappled with anger, confusion, and grief, but ultimately found a path forward that honored Jack's memory while creating something new and vital. Claire emerged from the house with 2 cups of coffee, handing one to Anna before taking the adjacent chair. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the lake in familiar shades of gold and purple. A loon called in the distance, its cry no longer mournful, but somehow hopeful. "You know," Claire said softly, "sometimes I think this is exactly what they all wanted. Dad, Robert, and Jack. A place where truth and forgiveness could exist together." Anna nodded, feeling Jack's presence in every corner of this place that had once been his secret, and was now a sanctuary for healing and hope. The summer house stood as a testament to the power of redemption, and to the enduring strength of love that transcends even the deepest secrets. As the light faded, Anna realized that the weight she had carried for so long, the hurt of Jack's deception, the shock of discovering his secret life, had lightened. In its place was a deep gratitude for the man she had loved, flaws and all, and for the legacy he had left behind. A legacy that she now carried forward, not alone, but surrounded by a community bound together by shared history and a commitment to a better future. The summer house, once a hidden chapter in Jack's life, had become the opening page of a new story, one of healing, growth, and the enduring power of love to transform even the darkest secrets into sources of light. What did you think of the story? Please leave a comment with your opinion. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm sure there will be new videos on this channel that will surprise you. Give it a like and activate the notification bell so you don't miss our next videos. See you soon.